Hello, hello out there. I hope it's working now. What a pain in the ass. Holy cow. Let's see how long it works for. So, what's up, everybody? It's Saturday. Sorry, I'm a little late. My computer just kept restarting over and over again. I don't know if the new software is not working properly or what, but it was quite painful. I'm just kind of getting back here. All right. So if you entered the contest, it still shows you guys have all entered, so you don't have to worry about that. And yeah, so sorry, I'm a little flustered. I got everything working, and then all of a sudden it just kept dropping out on me. So I don't know what could be the case. So to start off, I'm going to show you guys what my wife gave me for my anniversary. It's pretty darn cool. Uh, so I'm going to hang this up in my office, and it's made by Chris Turner of Worldwide Corals, which is what we're giving away today. And if you shine an actinic light on it, it kind of glows. They're really cool. So that's why the giveaway today is going to be a $100 gift card to Worldwide Corals. So really cool gift that my wife gave me. So I just wanted to show everybody before we started. So let's see, couple things going on. I decided to remove my turf scrubbers from my systems and put all new turf scrubbers in. I was having some issues with my current turf scrubbers, so I put in some new turf scrubbers. Hopefully, I'll be putting a video together on it. I just been so busy. Um, yeah, Glenn, you don't need it. I have it right here. Everyone that's entered has entered. I can see it right here. So again, you don't have to worry. If you haven't entered and you're concerned, just go ahead and type in the Reef Automation, and then, like I said, if you already entered, it will do nothing, and if you haven't entered, it'll say you've entered. Um, so today we're going to talk about programming. We're going to be a little more in depth with programming. For those that don't know, I went to college for computer science, and I have a degree in computer science engineering. So all of my background is in programming. So really, specifically, we're going to go over some real basics of programming and how that feeds into what we do with Apex. Um, and I'll go over again how these are done in Apex in a more simple term. So if you are a programmer or you have programmed before, this might be a little boring for you. But for some people that have never seen programming or are not familiar with programming, this might really help you out. So um, let's see. So we got a lot of people on here. Again, if you want to win the $100 gift card today, you are going to need to participate and make sure that. Sorry, guys, I'm still flustered from getting everything ready this morning. And be participating in the chat, and it shows me how long you've been on, so I'll know if we got cheaters. So anyway, let's get started. By the way, here's the contest. So again, it's still all working, so you don't have to worry about that. Let me get my notepad out. I forgot to do that this morning. And I think Wave Code was asking, can we add comments to our Apex code? I'm not sure what that means exactly. You'll have to kind of go over that with me. Okay, let's see. No, 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 no. All right. Come on, baby. Okay. So we're gonna go over exactly how we do some of this regular programming stuff. So let me see why this is. Yeah, again, guys, I am sorry. I'm still kind of flustered over this morning, and I'm trying to catch up. So just bear with me. Okay, so we're gonna go over some basics of programming. We're gonna start with again, some of this for those that have programmed before are gonna find this a little boring. So I apologize, but for people that aren't familiar with programming, we're gonna really explain how this feeds into an Apex or a GHL or any programming platform. Okay, let me get my little thing going back here. There we go. Okay, so there's very basics of programming, and we're going to start with the if statement. So it's really called an if-else statement. Okay, so what this basically means, and again, this is very basic. If something happens, I want you to do something. However, if that does not happen, I want something else to happen. And that's for the else. So for instance, if my oh my God, my refrigerator is on, then turn off microwave. Okay? So that's a very basic example of the if statement, okay? If the refrigerator is on, then I want you to turn off my microwave. Okay, now else would mean if the refrigerator is off, okay, that's the else statement because it's the opposite of whatever this is. Okay, so else I want you to turn on microwave. Okay, so if the refrigerator is on, then turn off the microwave. If the refrigerator is not on, I want you to turn on the microwave. And that's how an if and else statement works. And that's how all of Apex is basically programmed. It's programmed from if statements. If something is happening, then do something else. Okay? But the else statement is what's not part of Apex, and that's what we're going to go over, okay? So if you wanted something else to happen, that's where we have to put it in Apex in a specific program, and we have to specifically put, I want to do this and I want to do this. However, if this is happening, I don't want to do this. And that's what I'm going to kind of go over how you do it with Apex, okay? So this is an if-else statement, okay? Now, another statement is called an or statement, okay? Again, basics of programming. So or would mean if my refrigerator, why did I pick refrigerator? Refrigerator is on, or my microwave is on, then do something. So let's say then turn lights on. So if my refrigerator is on or my microwave is on, then I want to turn the lights on. Okay? So what that would mean is if my refrigerator is off but my microwave is on, the lights are still going to turn on. And if my refrigerator is off and my microwave is off, then the lights are not going to turn on. So that's an or statement. Okay? You also have something called an and statement. If refrigerator, oh my goodness, I should not have picked refrigerator and microwave, then turn lights on. Now, an and statement would indicate that both the refrigerator and the microwave need to be on in order to turn on the lights. Make sense? So, again, very basics of programming, and Macy's daddy just had a perfect point, which is I'm going to show you how to do this in Apex. That's basically what we're doing today. But I wanted to get the fundamentals down of what these all mean, okay? And that's why we're doing this. All right, so we have an if, an else, an or, an and. We have something called a not. So if refrigerator is on, then a not would mean that refrigerator is off. Okay, so what a not means, it's the opposite of the statement. Now, I want to also mention something I didn't mention. Everything I'm talking about here is what's called a Boolean value. If you're not familiar with what a Boolean value is, a Boolean value is true. Oh my goodness, why am I struggling? Or false. Or it could be on or off. It also could be 1 or 0. Okay? So everything I'm showing you is based off of Boolean values. Okay? So a not would mean if it's a 1, then it's not 0. If it's true, then a not would mean it's false, and that's what a not means, okay? So again, Boolean values, very specifics, false or true. That's pretty much how Apex works with false and trues. They also use, of course, values, which we're going to go over, which are what we call 0 to 10 values or 0 to 100 values, and those can be used in Apex as well. In programming world, they are called an analog value, or we have a Boolean value, an analog value, and a string value, but we're not going to go into the specifics of that. All right, so that's the basics. You have if, else, or, and, not. You also have, technically, we're not going to really go into it. We have a nor, a NAND, which is the opposite of an or and the opposite of an and. So what that means is if refrigerator is on, nor, N-O-R, microwave is on, that would mean that both of these would have to be off in order for it to function. But again, we're not going to go over that. That's not important. But just again, that's another statement that can be used in the Boolean value world. You also have a compare value, which most of you learned in school. So a compare value would be greater than, less than, equal to. Let me split these up so it's a little bit easier. And I'm assuming you learn these in school. These are called compare values. You have equal to, less than. So what all these mean, if you're not familiar with them, is we have greater than, we have less than, we have equal to, we have not equal to, we have, I don't believe that's in Apex. We have equal to, or, less than, and then we have equal to or greater than. So these are the compare values, okay? Again, basics of programming. Let's see. Reefing with O asked to explain the NAND and the OR. So again, in Apex valuing, we're not going to really use the NOR and the NAND. So I can go over kind of it, but it's the opposite of an OR. So it's basically a not OR. That's what NOR means. Consider it a not OR, and consider it a not and. So what that would basically mean is if refrig, oh, now it's typing it in for me, good, equals on, nor microwave is on, then turn lights on. So what this basically means is that if the refrigerator is on and the microwave is on, then turn the lights on. It's a nor, so it's not an or, okay? So anyway, reefing with O, I'm not going to really go over it, but it's basically the opposite of an and or. And inside Apex, they don't use that. So there's really no reason for me to show you. But again, that's another specific value, okay? Or sorry, a specific, we call them logic gates, by the way. If you guys want to look this up online, these are called logic gates. Basic Boolean logic gates. Okay. Jake Speed's asking, how would I program my skimmer to turn down from 50 to 10 with 0 to 10 for an hour every day? We can do that specifically if you want a little bit later. Jake, just remind me and I can show you how to do that. Yep, we're going to go, Brandon, that's pretty much exactly what we're going to go over. Is there Ron is asking, is there a character limit? Now, are you asking, is there a character limit with Apex and the naming structures, or are you asking, is there a character limit with what I'm showing you right now? Yeah, Glenn, we're going to go over that also. That's all part of today's lesson. Okay, so um, this is the basics of programming, okay? The basics of Boolean values, the basics of how programming works in a normal world. This is what you learn in the first class when you go to college to learn programming. They teach you the logic gate Booleans, or what I'm showing you here. John asked, we'll go over the when statement. Well, again, the when statement isn't really a value in the programming language of Boolean values. We're going over just Boolean values. But again, that's how we're going to kind of explain it going forward, okay? Apex line limit, there is a limit of characters, and they'll usually tell you when you try to type something in if that's too long. What is the importance of capital letters? There is no importance of capital letters in both programming language, or at least the programming languages I use, and Apex. Capital letters do not matter. Can you set an alarm for DDR level if optical switch doesn't operate? No, you cannot do that. There's no sensor inside there that tells you what the level is, and you cannot program anything on the DDR in terms of its value. There's no output for that, and I've actually discussed that with Neptune and asked them to actually come up with something because I think that would be nice for programming. Okay, so we're going to go over to the Apex now, and based on what I've shown you, explain how you do some of these, okay? John, correct. There is no way to comment out things in Apex, which I wish there was. Now, what a comment is, he's talking about a C or a forward slash forward slash. What a comment is in programming is basically eliminating it or removing it from the program. So, for instance, if we're going to do this all in a virtual outlet. So let me create a virtual outlet so I can show you how to do all this without messing up my program. This is training. And I'll explain a comment a little bit here in a second. All right. I'm trying not to go too fast with this. This is a little more, for people that are not programmers out there, this is extremely simple for those that are programmers. However, this is extremely difficult for people that aren't programmers. So I'm kind of trying to give this lesson more for people that aren't familiar with programming. So let's go through this here. The closest normal coding language comparable to programs, oh folks, I would have to say is C or C++. I mean, it's probably the closest. They don't have any basic knots or anything in there, but it's quite interesting that they don't have an actual language that they call Apex programming language, but it's very not. It's closest to C, I would say. This is stuff I learned back in 2000, most of it. All right, so we're going to go over the if statement. You guys, hopefully, if you've programmed Apex, are familiar with the if statement. They do not have an else statement in Apex language, okay? So how you have to program an else is you program an else with a set, okay? So, for instance, this is an outlet. We're going to call it the training outlet, but let's say it's a light, just for the sake of this. Training, this is a light, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to base our if and else, which is what I based on, or what I said earlier, on what we're going to learn right here. So a set is technically an else statement, or what's going to happen if the if isn't true, Okay. Again, I'm going to try to do this as simply and slow as I can, but if you can just keep up with me, if you have any questions, just of course let me know. So let's say we want the light to always be on. Okay. We want the light to always be on. We'll put a set. Okay. So set on. That's going to give us the light is always going to be on. The if is going to be the if statement of what you want the light to do if something else is happening. Okay. All right. So let's say if I don't know if feed A is on, and again, just ignore the syntax. I'm just writing stuff. So let's say if feed mode is on, then off. Okay. So remember, based on our if statement, if the feed mode is on, then I want you to turn this off. However, the else, okay, so else is our set statement. Okay, so if feed mode is on, I want you to turn it off. But if feed mode is not on, else, then it's going to be on. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, the set is your else statement. So if we were to type this out in the coding that I just told you, it would be if feed mode equals on, then off, else would be on. Okay, so what that would basically mean is if the feed mode is on, then turn it off. But if it's not, then I want you to put the light on. And that's where the set comes in. The set can be off, of course. So it's still the else statement. It's what's happening if the if statement isn't accurate or true. Does that make sense? So hopefully I didn't lose you there. I'll keep that up there for a second. Let me look at some of the programs here. Will you be touching on defer and min time? Not really, Macy's daddy. I do have a video on defer and min time. This is more, like I said, the basics of programming. So we're not going to really go over specific Apex programming. This is more of how in the real world you're using basics of programming. Glenn, I'm gonna specifically go over what you just said here. We're gonna go over that kind of towards the end, okay? Do you need to know this programming to make the use? You do not, KW Corals. What they have here is in the control type that you actually, if you don't click on advanced, you can do basics of programming right here. Again, this is more advanced stuff if you want to make your own programming. All the statements TTL do need to be separate lines in Apex. That's correct. Okay. So again, think of the set statement as an else statement. Okay. So that's how we look at it in the programming world. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of this. So we're going to go through the next one. So if something's happening, do this. Set something if the if statement isn't true. Okay. So we're also going to mention the fallback statement. So you guys have probably seen the fallback statement. The fallback statement is not an else statement. Okay, it's not even part of the programming. What fallback does, and I'm going to explain this, I'm going to actually say this twice because I've had people ask me. But what the fallback statement does is it sets the outlet to on or off in fallback, which is on in this statement, when the apex loses communication to the outlet. Okay? Now, what that means is it doesn't mean the apex loses internet connection. That doesn't mean that the apex has no power. What this means is that your outlet, which is an EB8 or an EB832, has lost its communication to the brain. And that can be via the USB got unplugged. That could be the USB from the apex stopped communicating. This is what fallback does. Okay? Has nothing to do with the set statement, has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's strictly for if the apex loses communication to the outlet. Okay? Sean, it will definitely tell you if the line or code is inaccurate. It will definitely give you an error. So, fallback's very important because if you lose communication, you don't want certain things to be on or off. So for instance, if your Apex loses communication to a doser, you don't want it to be on, so you want to have a fallback off. However, if it does lose communication on a pump, you might want the fallback to always be on. So fallback's very important, and I recommend you putting it on every single statement that you use. Um, Even if it's an outlet that you rarely use, it should always have a fallback statement, okay? All right, so that's the if and else. The next one we were doing was or, okay? So or is actually one of the easier ones in the Apex world. So now we're doing or. So let's say the light is if, the very basic would be if your feed mode is on, then I want the lights to turn on, right? So if the feed mode equals on, or it is on, I want the turn lights on, right? However, I also want it to happen if the feed mode is, or if feed mode, or not feed mode, I'm sorry. Let's say if doser is on, then lights turn on. So this is an or statement. Very easy. This is probably the easiest one that I'm going to teach you. So in Apex coding, so again, the top is what we would say is not an Apex coding. So in Apex coding, we would say if feed mode equals on, then on, and if doser equals on, then on. So what this means, very, very simple. If the feed mode is on or the doser is on, turn it on. That's the or statement, right? You can also, of course, put a set here, which would mean that that's your else statement. So if the feed mode is on or the doser is on, turn it on. But if neither of those are on, the else statement comes into play, which is your set statement. Turn it off. Let's see. Fallback needs to be for each program due. Yeah, I recommend it that you put a fallback statement on each outlet. The order of set and fallback statements do matter. We're going to kind of go over that in a little while, Milton. I haven't went over that yet. We're just kind of doing basics right now. But this is, again, how you would do an or statement. If feed mode is on, turn it on, or, it's probably better if I put an or here. Or, so in logical sense, if feed mode is on, then turn lights on, or if doser is on, turn lights on. We can also write this as if feed mode or doser are on, then turn lights on in basics. So again, this is what we're trying to do. If feed mode or doser are on, turn lights on. And again, this would be inside the Apex what it would look like. Okay? Let's see. Okay, so again, or statements I think are the easiest statements to accomplish because if this or this or this or this or this happens, this is what I want to happen, right? So there's just your or statement. Again, a basic of programming, how you implement it into Apex. Again, for those that aren't programmers, I'm trying to do this as slow as I can and kind of go over it. I know some of this is going to go over some of your guys' head. Again, you can watch this back and look at this and kind of get used to it. But this is if you want to accomplish something. So if you want to accomplish an or statement, which is what we went over, this is how you would do it. Glenn said, if you read some posts that say you should always put fallback on, no, you should not always put fallback on. You only put fallback on to important things. Like I said, a doser. You don't want your doser to be on fallback. That's just an example. You don't want your doser to keep dosing if you lose connectivity. Let's see. Are diverse statements always last, or does it? We're going to go over that, John. I know a lot of people asked about order. We're going to go over that at the end. Let's see. Kevin asked, you maybe not getting advanced. I'm getting pretty advanced in a bit here. You'd set up an outlet like a light switch, something would turn on, and something would turn it on, and something would turn it off without a step. Yes, we're going to go over that. Again, this is if you want to use an or statement, okay? But you could technically do this, Kevin. You could just do this. You could just say if, off. This accomplishes the same thing. I mean, you could do it that way. I find the set to be much easier, which is going to go into the and statement, which is something that people ask me all the time to do. So we're going to go through that and statement now. So this is an and. So for instance, this would be if feed mode is on and doser is on, then turn lights on. Okay, this is where it gets a little dicey. So I'm going to try to explain this the best I can. Okay, now we have an and statement. So two things need to occur in order for this to happen. Okay. So let's see. If feed mode is on and doser is on, then turn the lights on. So two things need to happen here. Okay. So let me explain how we're going to do this in Apex. Sorry, I'm looking at some of your. Daryl, yes, there's a way to remove it. I will show you how to do that real quick. Or I can't do it right now. Sorry. I remind me, Daryl. I'll show you. It's very simple to do that. All right. So now we want two things to happen. Okay. You guys are annoying sometimes. Brian, you are in the contest. Okay. And Anthony, you are also in the contest. All right. Moving on. All right. So if feed mode is on and doser is on, then turn the lights on. Okay. So let's kind of go over how we're going to do this. So normally we want something to be on, and you're going to do the opposite basically. Okay. So if feed mode is on and the doser is on, turn the lights on, right? But only if the feed mode is on and the doser is on, right? So what we would do here is we would say if feed mode is off, then off. Okay, right? If doser is off, then off. So this accomplishes the exact same thing, okay? So again, we want feed mode, if it's on, and the doser, if it's on, to turn the lights on. So normally the lights are on, right? But if the feed mode is off, then turn it off. And if the doser is off, turn it off. So any one of these are going to turn on the lights otherwise. You see what I'm doing here? So this is how you would technically accomplish and I say technically because it's not really an and statement, okay? So again, set on, it's always on, right? It's always on. Now someone comes in there and they turn off the feed mode, right? So we would want a little bit, I actually screwed this up. We'd actually want if doser, if doser is on, then on. If doser is off, then off. Okay, this is actually correct. I apologize. Because we want an and statement to happen. So if the doser is on, I still want it to stay on. It has to be that both of these are true. Okay? see some of the questions here. We got a lot of questions. Can you program a sensor, send a message when low? So Bob had a question. Can you program a sensor in an auto top-off reservoir that sets a message when low water level be done? Yes. Yes. That you just do an if closed or if open, then on your email alert. So if it's closed, that would generally mean that it has water, and if it's open, that means it generally doesn't have water. And a breakout box can work, or of course you can do an FMM and a sensor. So you can always bypass the and statement by using multiple if-then statements. Essentially, that's correct. We're not really bypassing any of the basics of programming here. We're just doing it in Apex language, which is what a lot of people have trouble with. That's why I'm showing you what it looks like in simple terms up here. If this and this are happening, how it looks in Apex. Looks a little weird. I wish they had an and statement. I wish they had an or statement. I wish they had all these statements, because then it would make it so much easier for us programmers. But for people that are trying to do basic stuff, you can see where it gets really confusing. All right, so that's your and statement. So we have an and an or statement, right? Let's see. Not also an easy one. You'll do a set on, and you'll say if outlet equals on, then off. So basically what you're doing is, if something is happening, do the opposite. If outlet is off, then on. That's technically a not statement. If something is on, then it's off, and if it's off, and then it's on. And that's basically how you would do, sorry, there's no set there. You would do this as a not statement. This is technically what a not statement is. All right. Okay. We're going to go over compares, because a lot of people understand what compares are, but they don't use them as often. So you can say if pH is greater than 8.0, then on. That's a statement. You can say if pH is less than 8.0, then off. Those are compare statements. So you can do, let's see, pH, you could do alkalinity, you can do any of these statements with compare statements. Okay, so this is how you would do a compare statement. Very basic stuff in the Apex. Let's see, just explain the aura is being processed. Okay, I'm gonna go over that, Glenn. Let's see. All right, so we'll go over order. So how Apex works. The first thing that I need to go over is the module alerts. This is very important. I get a lot of questions about this. So on the older Apex, on the Apex Classics, they didn't have this. So if you have an Apex Classic, this doesn't mean anything to you. But on the newer Apexes, they all have this. So if you click on the little gear next to any of the pH probes or salt probes or any of the probes, you see that it has an automatic alarm, okay? And if you go to advanced, you can actually set your minimum and maximum when you want to receive an alarm, okay? So how I'm trying to explain this is, these alarms right here, all of them inside the Apex modules, we call them module alarms. That's the short term for it. Module alarms will always override your alarm outlet, okay? Sorry, your email outlet, not your alarm outlet. So your base email will always be overridden, no matter what's going on in here. Those modules are going to override it. So if something on the module is happening, but something inside here is very important, it's not going to alert you about it, because that's going to take precedence. So you can either make one of two decisions. You can put your module alarms inside your alarms, which is how we used to do it in the Apex. So inside your email, you could put, if pH is greater than, 8.4, then on. And then if pH is less than 7.7 or something, then on. You could put that in there, and then Glenn, to your question, it'll then operate, which I'm going to go over in line by line. But if you put this information not in your email statement and you are using your module alarms, so you're using these guys here, then they will override anything that's going on in that email. Okay? So does that make sense? I don't know if I confused anybody there, but it's very important to know that, because if you're programming your email outlets and you have a bunch of modules programmed, your email outlet isn't going to do anything. If, of course, if these are true. Okay? All right, so email, or let's go back to our training outlet, sorry. And while we're here, someone asked, how do you delete virtual outlets? You click on, sorry, not that. You click on the little outlet guy right here. You go up to the right corner where the gear is, and you say show delete column, and then you'll see these X's next to all of your virtual outlets. You hit the X, and that will do your, that'll delete the virtual outlet from the system. Okay? And I saw there's a number of questions on how to program specifically doing things. What we'll do here after I'm done, because it's the last portion I want to discuss, I'll teach you guys how to program specific things that you're asking, so I can answer each one of your questions individually. So let's go back to our training module, or training outlet, sorry. Okay, order of operations. This is what Glenn was asking, and a lot of people ask. How order of operations works is it's always going to process the last thing first, okay? So someone had asked, is it important to put the defer statements last? Yes. You don't have to, but I recommend it, because it's the last thing that's going to happen in the program, which also means the first thing. Let me apologize for what I said. It's going to scroll down the list, and it's going to look at every single thing one by one, and whatever's at the end is going to take precedence over what's on the top. Okay? So for instance, if I put an if lights equals on then off, if lights equals on then on, what's going to happen here is very simple. What's going to happen to the lights here is they are going to turn on. They are never going to turn off with this statement, ever. Let's pretend, and we'll go back to what John said, let's pretend we comment this out. Okay? So that's the commenting out of the which basically means it doesn't do anything. This is the same thing. Okay, so order of operations dictates that the bottom line, or line 2, is going to take precedence over line 1. So even though line 2 and 1 say the same thing, line 2 is going to be the one that's going to take over. Okay. Mark asked, I believe there's a way to show. There is not a way to show every 10 minutes. You have to use a virtual outlet, and I did. If you look at my virtual outlet program or video, I specifically actually went over how to do this particular question that you just asked. So again, I can write anything here. If lights equals on, then 50% or 40%. I can say if lights equals on, then 100%, right? Whatever's going to happen here, number 4 is always going to be what's actually going to happen if lights are on. Okay? So Glenn, I hope that helps you. That's why we always put the defer statement on the bottom. Defer, I don't know, 5 minutes. And we can go over defer statements. So again, the last line is always going to kind of take precedence. Okay? John asked, are fallback and set utilized when not in advanced? Yes, they are on some of the devices. If you go in here, I think it's auto top off has it. No. There we go. There's a fallback right there. So chiller has a fallback statement. Okay. But yeah, some of them have it. So again, remember that your lines are important. If they're looking at multiple things and they're doing the same thing, precedence or what's going to actually happen is going to be the last line, which is going to be whatever's on the bottom. So I'll give you an example. So if we go to my email alerts, which is probably one of the biggest things that everyone questions or asks, you'll notice that I have my most important things on the bottom, okay? So my most important things, if power is off, then on. So I don't care about any of this other crap that's happening, right? If my power goes off, I want this to take precedence over all of this other stuff. You'll notice that my leaks are also on the bottom because leaks take precedence over the rest of this stuff. So you're going to want to put your most important things that you need to be alerted on the bottom because these are going to take precedence over anything that's happening. So for instance, if I had a leak in my fish tank, right? If I had a leak right here, I'll put leak. But my power also went off at the exact same time. I say that because it has to happen at the exact same time. You're going to get an alert that's going to say your power's off. But you also have a leak. You wouldn't know you have a leak because the power is what took precedence. Does that make sense? So someone had asked about defer statements. All defer statement does, and I did a video also on defer statements. Everything that you guys have asked, I've actually done a video on it, so I would take a look at those videos. But what a defer statement does is it's basically a delay, okay? So what it's doing is it's checking all this stuff. So let's say my reef is high or my reef is low. Someone had asked about a low outlet alert. I think Bob did. So if my reef is low, then I want you to turn my alarm on. However, I want you to wait 20 seconds till I'm alerted. Okay, because what if it was a false? You know, what if the high or low sensor got a splash of water for a second, right? And I don't want to get alerted that my reef tank is low because a splash of water just hit it just for a second, right? I want it to wait 20 seconds till it says, okay, there's definitely water there. Now I want you to alert me. So that's what a defer statement does, okay? All right. So that's about it for today in terms of what I wanted to teach you guys. I know it's a lot of stuff and I know it's a lot of information. I would recommend you rewind this or replay it if you had any questions on specifics that I showed you. Brian had a good point. I personally don't use module outlets. I like them in an emailer because you can set priority. Exactly. So that's very important, okay? So now, reefing with O, I'll answer that. Does this defer statement apply to all statements or just the last? It applies to all statements in the entire outlet. It will defer all of them. So that's a really good question, Macy's Daddy. Let's go back to training session. So if I have a set off and I have a defer for 5 minutes off, it's going to defer my off statements for 5 seconds, right? If I set a set on and I put a defer 10 seconds, or this is actually 10 minutes, sorry, then on, it's going to defer my on statements for 10. So these are two separate things. So you'll see in one of my outlets here, I have an auto top off outlet right here. I have a defer on and a defer off. Okay, so on is going to defer the on statements, off is going to defer the off statements. Okay. Digger, there's not a way to do that. However, there is a statement if you have an EB8. Let me show you what the statement is. Oops. Here we go. So Digger, if your Apex is plugged in, your brain has power, but the EB8 has lost its power, there is something called if power, then your EB8 off, 0, 0, don't worry about the 0, 0, just put 0, 0, then on. This will alert you if your EB8 loses power, okay? So hopefully that helps you. That's kind of the same thing if the breaker trips. Is there an easy way to run a core at the minimum speed without being in feed mode? Rick, I'm not exactly sure. You're going to have to give me an example of when you'd want to do that, then I can show you how to do that. So how does it take for an optical sensor to trigger once it has water? I have found, Daniel, that it takes roughly 2 to 3 seconds. So it starts reading from the bottom, then it keeps reading up and up to 1 until it finds something that is true. Not necessarily. It reads from the top and then when it finds something true, and not the opposite. But the bottom will always take precedence over what's above it. So if something is going down the list and then it goes on, but then something underneath it says off, off is going to take precedence of the on. Digger, it should trip if the breaker trips. Is the question there, of course, is the Apex losing power when it hits the trip, which I don't think it is, which is probably why. I'm wondering if there's a way that you could run it with a fallback statement. That might work. So, Digger, I have an idea for you. If the breaker trips, I'm assuming the Apex then loses power or loses communication to the brain. I would check, hit the breaker, and see if you're getting a flashing orange light. If you're getting a flashing orange light, that means that the EB8 is losing power or is not communicating with the brain. You can then write a virtual outlet that tests one of the outlets on there and says fallback on or fallback off, and then you can, I know I'm going crazy with this, then you can put that into your alert, so it's going to check the fallback of one of the outlets. So if it checks the fallback of one of the outlets, then you could technically see if the breaker is tripped. You'll have to contact me. I don't know if that'll work. There is no difference between outlet and output. Not a single difference. It automatically changed it actually for you. Let me show you. So if we go over and reefing with O, I'm going to go over the time thing for you here in a second too. Steve and Dick, I just went over that. I don't know if you just got in, but I literally just talked about that. Let's see. What were we doing? We were doing Macy's Daddy. We were not doing Macy's Daddy. Anyway, where's Desert Reef Aquatics today, by the way? We're supposed to be making fun of him, and he's not here. Okay, so if you say if output, let's say I have a reef pump, right? If a reef, it doesn't matter. Reef amino equals on and off, right? So if output, which is what you were just saying, if I load this and I go back to it, oh, sorry. Training outlet. Notice it says output. Now if I put outlet here, which is what you were just asking, and I do the same thing, watch what happens. And I go back. What does it say? So if you type in outlet, Macy's Daddy, it'll automatically change it to output. Okay, so there's no difference. Let's see. Okay, Reefing with O had a question about time. I think you had a question about day. So if day, well, I think it's man, I don't even remember I don't use this very often. It's a time of day or it's not day. Days. That's not it. Man, why can't I remember this? Anybody else know the syntax for it? Day of week Apex. I thought it was day. I can't remember. None of this is helping. Why don't I remember the syntax? Day of week Apex. That'll probably help. Why Neptune systems? Why can't I remember the syntax? Oh, it's DOW. Thank you, Brian. Oh my goodness. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then on. So, God, I'm just so out of it today after trying to get everything working for everyone. Okay, so what Reef with this is how day of week works. So if you put the day of week capital letter of that day, so Saturday, this is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This would mean every single day, okay? If you want it to not come on during a certain day, you put a dash there. So what this would mean is it'll only work on Saturdays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. This would only work Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. That's how you do days of week. Oh boy. All right. What other specifics? I had someone ask about a skimmer, I think. Let me look up here. How would you program a skimmer outlet? Would you program a skimmer outlet? I don't quite get your question, Coral Lovers. I'm sorry. Let's see. I'm trying to look up at some of these questions. Carrie Reefer, what's the best thing about an Apex system? Oh boy. I'm going to let everyone in the chat tell you what they think about that. Daryl, I literally just put how to delete a virtual outlet. I don't know if you left, but I showed you how to do it. What is better to have now? Apex on 2 separate tanks, second Apex, or keep a spare? You know, Terrence would yell at me about this, but I have 3 fish tanks on 1 Apex, and I have a backup brain just in case. I find it easier to have it on 1 Apex because I can just look at everything, sorry. And it's great to have all of my tanks on 1 page. I do wish I do wish that they would have tabs or something. That would be awesome. Reef automation swag. No one ever asked for that. Interesting. I'll think about it. Group's still pretty new, so I put a lot of money into the giveaways. So to get all those things, I would have to have inventory, or I'd have to get with someone. So thank you, Daniel. This group is the best thing. I appreciate it, man. Let's go back to Coral Lovers. What is you already asked that? Sorry. I programmed my skimmer to turn off for 1 hour during feeding since. Okay. Yep. You cannot use 2 Apex at the same time. I wish you could. I have looks like my ATO decided to turn off for some reason. Let's see. Yeah, Maze Data, I've asked them. I wish there was a way to do it, but unfortunately I haven't come up with a way to do it. So did anybody else have any specific programming requests, or they want me to show them how to do something specifically? I tried to get to all the questions, but I know there was a lot of questions about a lot of different things. I tried to get to all of your questions, guys. I'm going to go back to me here for a second. Okay. Yeah, so sorry about the lateness. I know it's about 11:15, which is why I'm kind of cutting this a little short. It's about an hour, but it took me 20 minutes to get this thing going, unfortunately. That's a good one, Mindstream monitor. Let me reset the camera real quick because it's going to reset on me. There we go. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, my new camera has a timer. After 30 minutes, it shuts off, and there's no way to extend it. I've called them 30 minutes is as far as it goes, so I got to reset my camera every 30 minutes. All right, let me go back over to here. Let's see, we got 35 people that entered the contest today, which is awesome. Thanks, Anthony. I hope no one's getting tripped out or dizzy from it. It's pretty quick camera movements, but I just took the video that I put online and put it in the background. Turning off a skimmer with defer while using doser for aminos. The question I'm assuming is, how do you turn off a skimmer with a defer while using doser for aminos? I'm assuming that's what you're asking. So you set your module alarms as well as your email, or do you use your email? So Brian Bench had a good point. I recommend specifically for people that have like just a few things to use the module alarms. But if you have a lot of stuff, I would use the email alarms. Yeah, you can rename whatever you want, Milton. Let me go back here for you. So you go to the little thermometer looking guy right here. And then this is all your probes and switches. So let me see, you're looking for a switch. So like this one, you go and click on it, and you just rename it right there. That's how you rename the switch. Desert Reef finished printing his new friends. He's always printing stuff with his printer that he tells me now sucks, by the way. If anyone sees him next time on the stream, make fun of his printer because he texted me and he goes, man, this 3D printer sucks. I have so many problems with this 3D printer. And I'm like, go figure, man. You don't know what the hell you're doing. So just make fun of him about his 3D printer. Oh, I love him. He showed me, by the way, you guys need to pester him a little bit. He showed me, we FaceTime the other day, and he showed me his new house and all of his stuff. He's got a room with, I think he has like 30 something reptiles in there in all different cages. It's the most insane thing I've ever seen. I don't know if he's turning his house into a like a store where people can go to, or it's going to become a zoo, but one of the two. It's insane. And then he's got another room where he's putting a 250-gallon glass fish tank in. I don't know what the heck he's doing with it. And then he showed me a picture of this gigantic tank with this huge fish and this gigantic salamander. Dude, he's got so many crazy things going on at his house. Holy cow. I would ask him what's the crazy stuff that he's doing. I don't know why it wants me to upgrade to Prime, but whatever. Anyway, so we're gonna run the contest here. Today's contest is for $100 Worldwide Corals gift card. If you guys missed the beginning, we're doing a Worldwide Corals because my wife bought this for me for our anniversary. I'm gonna hang it up in here somewhere, and I guess you put an actinic light on it, and it shines like it glows in the dark. So I gotta find a way to add like an actinic light to my wall somehow. But the owner of Worldwide Corals makes these. It took about 6 months to make, so they're really cool. So that's why we're giving away a gift card to Worldwide Corals today. And again, I don't get sponsored by any of these guys. This is stuff that I buy with my own money for you guys. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to be giving away a Trident. I have it. I've shown pictures of it. It's in my storage, brand new in the box, hasn't been touched yet. Hopefully the reagents aren't expired by the time we get 1,000 subscribers. But anyway, 1,000 subs, and we will get that Trident to people. Hopefully you guys liked the stream today, and if you haven't, go ahead and hit the thumbs up below because it helps me out in getting that subscriber count. So let me get over to the contest here. So before I go, just any quick questions, any specifics that I might have missed. I know it was a lot of information for some of you. I just wanted to kind of go over basic stuff. It is basic to me because I'm a programmer, but I know for some of you it's not very basic. So I really hope it helped you guys. And again, all the streams are recorded, so you can go back and take a look at it. Can't wait to see the recording of this stream, it going out every 2 seconds. But anyway, all right. So our winner today is, and remember you have to be here. So if you're not here, you don't win. R5 Spike, you are our winner today, sir. Worldwide Corals, the owner of Worldwide Corals made it. Producer Reef, your name is definitely in there, and I can prove it. But our winner is R5 Spike. Producer, I saw you earlier. Producer Reef. You're in here. Okay, R5 Spike, you're in the UK. Can you buy stuff from Worldwide Coral? I probably can't. Well, tell me what you want a $100 gift card for, and I will get it for you, R5 Spike, okay? No, Brian, I think R5 Spike was in here. He asked me a couple questions. I remember asking him, answering him. Let's see. We're gonna switch over to here. Yeah, so R5 Spike, PM me on Facebook, and I'll get you $100 somehow. Even if I have to just PayPal you $100, I'll get you $100 because you won. So even if I just give you $100, I'm fine with that. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I really I apologize for the beginning. I was just struggling to get my computer working, which has never happened before. So hope you enjoyed the stream, and thanks for watching, and hope to see you guys next week. Adios.